They said love could conquer anything, until she chose money over the man who would one day change everything. In a quiet Nigerian town where dreams often die before they begin, a humble young man named Kofi dared to believe in love. But when the woman he adored rejected him because he was poor, something inside him broke, and from that heartbreak rose a fire that would shock the entire village. This is not just a story about love lost. It's a story about redemption, transformation, and the sweet silence of success that needs no revenge. She rejected him because he was poor. What he did next shook the whole village. In a town where everyone knows your story, heartbreak doesn't stay private, it becomes a headline. The sun was setting over Umunzi town, painting the rooftops gold and red. Street vendors shouted in the distance, children chased tires through narrow lanes, and the evening breeze carried the smell of roasted corn. Life here moved slowly. Everyone knew everyone, and gossip traveled faster than wind. Kofi Daniels stood by the small wooden bridge at the edge of town, his heart pounding harder than the river below. He was 24, quiet, respectful, and known for his strange habits of fixing broken things, old radios, lamps, phones. People said he could bring anything back to life except his own luck. Across the bridge came Nneoma, the girl he had loved since childhood. She was graceful, confident, and always dressed like she belonged somewhere richer. Her smile could light up a room, but lately it had become selective, only for those who could afford it. Kofi had waited years for this moment. He rehearsed the words in his head so many times that they no longer felt like words. They were prayers. When she stopped before him, he swallowed hard. "Nneoma, I've loved you for a long time. I may not have much now, but I'm working hard. One day, I'll build something that will make this town proud. I want you by my side." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then she laughed softly, not kindly but sharply, like a blade. "Greater than Kofi, you're sweet, but love doesn't buy anything. You fix radios. I want a man who can buy a station. Look at you. No car, no house, no future. You're not the kind of man I can be with." Her words struck him harder than any slap. A few people nearby turned to look. Kofi tried to speak, but his throat tightened. "So that's it?" he asked quietly. "You'd rather choose money than love?" "Greater than I'd rather choose reality," she replied, adjusting her purse. "Dreams don't feed anyone." Then she walked away, her perfume lingering like a reminder of everything he couldn't afford. Kofi stood there until the sun disappeared. By nightfall, the whole town had heard. At the barber shop, at the market, even at the church gate, people whispered about the boy who confessed love and got humiliated. But Kofi didn't shout, didn't curse. He simply walked home in silence, past curious eyes and mocking smiles. Inside his small room, he sat beside his mother's sewing machine, the only thing his late father left behind. His mother, Mama Rose, looked at him and understood without words. "My son," she said gently, "don't let pain turn your heart bitter. Let it turn you better. Sometimes rejection is just God's way of saying, prepare." That night, Kofi didn't sleep. He took out a broken lantern, opened it up, and stared at the wires and circuits. His hands moved automatically, fixing what was damaged. But in truth, he wasn't fixing the lantern. He was fixing himself. When the light flickered on, his face glowed in the dim room. It was more than light. It was determination. "One day," he whispered, "I'll show them what a poor man's dream can do." Outside, the town slept peacefully. Inside that small house, something powerful was born, not revenge, but purpose. And soon, Umunzi town C would learn that the boy they laughed at was not finished. He was just beginning. The same people who laugh at your fall will clap the loudest when you rise. For days, Kofi stayed indoors. The town had moved on, but he hadn't. Everywhere he went, he could feel the whispers, the hidden smirks. At the market, old women pitied him. At the barber shop, men laughed quietly. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was public humiliation. His mother, Mama Rose, tried to lift his spirit. "My son," she said one evening, handing him a bowl of yam porridge, "you are not poor because you have nothing. You are poor only when you stop believing you can have something." But Kofi couldn't eat. He stared at the bowl, then at the small lantern he had fixed, the same one that now burned every night in their house. "Mama, I'm tired," he said. "Tired of being the one people look down on." She smiled gently. "Then let them look down, Kofi. Just make sure that when you rise, they'll have to look up." Those words sank deep. That night, he made a decision. He would leave Umunzi town. If dreams couldn't grow there, he would plant them somewhere else. The next morning, he packed a small bag, 2 shirts, a notebook, and the broken phone he once tried to fix for Nneoma. It was all he had. He hugged his mother tightly, greater than, "Don't worry," he whispered. "I'll make you proud one day." "You already have," she replied, eyes shining. Kofi boarded a bus to Lagos, his heart heavy but hopeful. The highway stretched endlessly, carrying him away from laughter, pain, and the only home he'd ever known. Lagos was louder, faster, and crueler than he imagined. He slept in a mechanic's shop for weeks, doing small repairs for food. Every night, he looked up at the bright city lights and thought, "One day, they'll know my name." Then, one afternoon, as he sat outside repairing an old transistor radio, an elderly man stopped to watch him work. "Young man," the stranger said, "you fix things with care. Who taught you?" Greater than myself, sir," Kofi replied. "I just like bringing broken things back to life." The old man smiled. "Then maybe you can help me bring my workshop back to life too." That man was Mr. Adigan, a retired engineer whose small solar repair shop had nearly shut down. He offered Kofi a job, food, and a place to stay. For the first time in months, Kofi had a bed and hope. Under Mr. Adigun's mentorship, Kofi learned to assemble solar kits, fix inverters, and understand electrical circuits. He was a fast learner, quiet but sharp. He spent nights sketching ideas in his notebook, designs for affordable solar lamps for villages without power. One evening, Mr. Adigan found him still working long after closing time. "Kofi," he said softly, "what drives you like this?" Greater than pain," Kofi replied, "but I'm turning it into purpose." The old man nodded proudly. "Good. Remember, success built on pain lasts longer than success built on pride." Months passed. Kofi built his first working prototype, a small solar device that could power 2 bulbs and a fan. Mr. Adigan smiled when he saw it. "You've done what I couldn't at your age," he said. "Now the world will see what Umunzi threw away." That night, Kofi sent a short message to his mother. "Greater than star, Mama, the light has started to shine." "Star," she didn't reply immediately. But miles away, in that small town, She stood outside her house, looked up at the moon, and whispered, "Shine, my son, shine bright." Kofi closed his eyes. The pain of rejection was still there, but now it was fuel, burning quietly inside a boy who refused to stay broken. He was no longer running from what hurt him. He was building from it. And soon, the same town that mocked him would see the light he had created. Sometimes, the smallest opportunity is the door to your greatest story. Lagos moved fast, too fast for most people, but not for Kofi. He had learned to flow with its rhythm, to wake before the city roared, and sleep only when his hands had done something worthwhile. The workshop had become his second home. Wires on the floor, spare parts on the table, and dreams written in his notebook. Under Mr. Adigan's guidance, Kofi was changing. He no longer worked just to survive. He worked to create. Every repair job was a lesson in patience. Every failed circuit, a quiet reminder that success doesn't come to the proud, but to the persistent. One afternoon, as the sun baked the zinc roof, Kofi accidentally crossed two wires, and a small spark leapt out, burning his hand. "Ah!" he shouted, shaking it off. Mr. Adigan looked up from his bench, smiling faintly. "That's how you learn, boy." "Fire teaches faster than fear," Kofi laughed quietly, holding his hand under cool water. "Greater than, I guess it's part of the process. Greater than, it's all part of becoming something more than ordinary," the old man said. "Don't just fix problems, solve them." That line stayed in Kofi's heart like a seed. Days later, as power went out in their area again, Kofi sat in the dark workshop with only the dim light of his small solar lamp flickering beside him. He thought of his mother in Umunze. How many nights she must have sat in darkness too. He opened his notebook and began sketching. A simple solar device that could charge phones, light a room, and run a fan, affordable enough for rural families. "If they can't afford electricity," he murmured, "I'll give them light they can own." For weeks, he worked on the design, scavenging parts, testing, failing, restarting. Mr. Adigan watched silently, offering guidance only when needed. The boy was driven by something deeper than ambition. One evening, after many failed tries, the small solar kit flickered to life, two bulbs and a fan running quietly. Kofi froze, staring at the light. Then he shouted in joy, "Greater than, it works! It finally works!" Mr. Adigan came over, eyes wide. "You've done it, Kofi. You've built what people will need for years to come." They laughed together, proud and amazed. Kofi felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just a personal victory, it was a solution born out of pain. The next day, a student from a nearby university came to repair a fan. He saw the prototype sitting on the table. "Greater than, who made this?" he asked. "He did," Mr. Adigan said, pointing at Kofi. The student was impressed. He took pictures and posted them online with the caption, "Young Nigerian innovator builds solar kit for low-income homes." By evening, Kofi's phone buzzed non-stop. Messages, mentions, shares. People were talking. Some praised his talent. Others couldn't believe the same boy, once mocked in his village, could do this. 2 days later, while repairing an inverter, Kofi's phone rang. The caller ID read, "Lagos Tech Investments." "Hello," he said nervously. "Good afternoon, Mr. Kofi," a calm voice said. "We saw your solar design online. We'd like to meet and discuss a possible partnership." For a moment, Kofi couldn't speak. His hands trembled. "Yes, sir. Yes, I'm available." When he hung up, he looked at Mr. Adigan, disbelief in his eyes. "Greater than, sir, they want to invest." The old man smiled warmly. "You see, my boy, you turned your pain into light, and now the world has noticed." That night, Kofi stood on the workshop roof, gazing at the stars. The same sky that had witnessed his rejection in Umunzi now shone over his new beginning in Lagos. "Maybe destiny isn't found," he whispered. "Maybe we build it one wire at a time." He smiled to himself. No pride, no bitterness, just quiet strength. The spark that began with heartbreak had become a flame the whole world could soon see. He left as a poor boy. He was returning as a man the town would never forget. Months turned into a year, and Lagos became more than a city to Kofi. It became his battlefield. Every morning began before sunrise. Every night ended with tired but satisfied hands. The small workshop that once smelled of dust and broken wires was now alive with purpose. Investors from Lagos Tech had kept their word. They met Kofi, listened to his vision, and were struck by his honesty more than his invention. He didn't promise luxury, he promised change. With their support, he launched Sunlink Energy, a startup focused on bringing affordable solar kits to rural homes across Nigeria. The journey was tough. Contracts were delayed, permits were slow, and competitors tried to steal his ideas. But Kofi stayed grounded. He had seen darkness. That was why he worked harder to give light. Mr. Adigan, now his business partner, often reminded him, "The bigger you grow, the smaller you must stay in your heart." Sunlink's first batch of solar kits sold out within weeks. Families in small towns sent videos of children reading under bright light for the first time. A news channel picked up the story. Young Nigerian innovator brings solar power to the people. Kofi watched the broadcast silently. When his name appeared on the screen, he smiled faintly, not out of pride, but peace. The same world that once mocked his struggle was now clapping for his success. Back in Umunzi town, the news reached Nneoma's ears during breakfast. Her father was reading the paper when he said, "There's a boy from here who's doing well in Lagos, something about solar." She glanced over, uninterested, until she saw the name. Kofi Okoro. Her spoon froze mid-air. "It can't be him," she whispered. "Kofi? From here?" Her mother scoffed. "Maybe it's someone else." "That poor boy? Please. People don't just turn into success stories overnight," but something in Nneoma's heart didn't agree. A strange ache began to rise inside her, the kind that comes when memories won't stay buried. Meanwhile, Kofi's work spread like wildfire. His company's story was featured in multiple newspapers. Radio hosts praised his humility. Students in universities began calling him the Light Boy. For every achievement, Kofi remembered one thing. It's not about shining alone, it's about helping others find their light too. Then came the unexpected call. The state governor's office invited him to an award ceremony for outstanding innovation in renewable energy. Kofi thought it was a prank at first, but when the official letter arrived, sealed and stamped, even Mr. Adigan's old eyes filled with pride. "You've made it, Kofi," he said softly. "Your mother's prayers found their way into your hands." The ceremony was grand. Banners, cameras, and officials in colorful attires. As Kofi stepped on stage, the audience rose to their feet. The governor shook his hand and said, This young man proves that greatness can come from anywhere. The applause echoed through the hall like thunder. For a moment, Kofi closed his eyes and saw flashes of his old life. His mother's smile, the broken radio, the rejection. All the pain had become the foundation for this moment. After the event, journalists crowded him for interviews, but he stayed humble. "I'm not a genius," he said calmly. "I'm just a village boy who believed that small ideas can power big dreams." That night, he sat alone by his office window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Success hadn't changed him. It had revealed who he always was. The quiet boy who once fixed broken things was now fixing lives. He opened his phone and typed a message to his mother. "Mama, they gave me an award today." She replied minutes later, "My son, remember, real awards are given by God, not by men." Kofi smiled and whispered, "Yes, Mama." The next morning, newspapers across the state carried his photo with headlines that read, "From Village to Visionary, the Rise of the Dreamer." And far away, in that same small town, Nneoma stood by her window, reading the story online. Her eyes glistened, not with envy, but confusion. The boy she once rejected had become the man everyone celebrated. Little did she know, the same light she turned away from was now shining too bright to ignore. Life has a way of bringing everyone to the table they once refused to sit at. The day Kofi returned to his hometown, the sun rose differently, golden and proud, like it knew the boy who once walked barefoot on those dusty roads was coming home as a man reborn. The air buzzed with whispers even before his car entered the village. Traders paused mid-sail, children chased his convoy in excitement, and elders stood at their gates, murmuring prayers of awe. Kofi had come back not to boast, but to give. His company, Sunlink Energy, had chosen his own community as the first beneficiary of a rural solar project. Every home would soon have light. Free light, something the villagers had never imagined possible. He stepped out of the car, dressed simply, no chains, no loud clothes, no guards. Just Kofi, the same boy who once repaired radios in his mother's tiny shed. Yet now, the way people looked at him carried both admiration and disbelief. The shy boy they once pitied now stood before them like hope made flesh. The town square erupted in applause as he walked onto the stage. "My people," he said, with a calm, steady voice, "this project is not, sir, a gift. It's a seed. I learned that when you light one home, you light a heart. And when you light a heart, you light a future." Phones came out, flashes sparked. The governor's representative applauded. It felt like the entire village breathed pride in unison. And somewhere among the crowd stood Nneoma, her hands clasped tightly, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. She had heard rumors of Kofi's success, but dismissed them as gossip. Now, seeing him, tall, confident, speaking with grace, the truth hit her harder than she expected. The same Kofi she once turned away because he was poor now stood on stage, commanding a sea of faces. He didn't glance her way, not once. But that only made her feel the sting of memory more. Her father, Mr. Benson, who once laughed at Kofi's dreams, sat quietly at the back. His business, once the pride of the town, was falling apart. The contracts had dried up, the money had slowed, and for the first time he felt the fragile weight of fortune slipping through his fingers. As the event ended, the crowd swarmed Kofi, shaking his hands, blessing him, calling him "our son." our pride, the village star. Nneoma lingered by the gate, unsure whether to approach or walk away. But before she could decide, Kofi's car door closed, and he was gone, his convoy disappearing into the same dusty road they once walked together as children. That night, Nneoma sat outside her house, the sound of her parents arguing faint in the background. The moonlight fell gently on her face as she whispered to herself, "He really did it. He actually did it." The pride that once filled her heart with superiority now turned into something else, a hollow ache she couldn't name. For the first time, she realized that the tables of life had truly turned. And somewhere far away, in the same night, Kofi looked up at the same moon, whispering a quiet prayer, not of revenge, but of gratitude. He had no anger left for the past, only peace, because deep down he knew. Sometimes the sweetest victory is showing kindness where others expected bitterness. Regret is the most expensive luxury. It only comes when it's too late to return the favor. The music in Nneoma's home had stopped. The laughter, the guests, the noise of importance that once filled the house, gone. The silence now echoed louder than any generator ever had. Her father, once the proud businessman everyone greeted with respect, had fallen behind on payments. His company trucks, painted with bold lettering, now sat parked and rusted. The staff had left one by one. Even her mother, who once spoke with the confidence of wealth, now moved through the house in quiet worry. Nneoma still dressed neatly for work each morning, but her clothes no longer carried the shine they once did. She'd taken a job as a teacher at the community school, the same school she once drove past without a glance. The first few days were hard. The classrooms smelled of chalk and effort. The pay was small, but the children's laughter was honest. And for the first time in a long while, she saw joy that wasn't bought. Yet every night, when she walked home under the flickering streetlights, she felt a hollow ache. The faces that once smiled at her in admiration now looked at her with quiet pity. One evening, the principal gathered the teachers to announce something big. The school was finally getting solar power installed. Courtesy of an anonymous donor, he said proudly. Someone who believes in giving children a brighter future. When the lights first came on, the children screamed with joy. The teachers clapped, dancing under the bright new glow. For Nneoma, it was different. She just stood there, looking up at the shining bulbs, her eyes stinging with tears. That night, as she packed up her lesson notes, she saw the logo printed faintly on one of the new solar boxes, Sunlink Energy. Her hands froze. For a long minute, she just stared, heart pounding, as her past flashed like a movie. The rejection, the words she said, the look on his face when he walked away. She whispered his name under her breath. Kofi. The realization hit her deep. The light that filled her classroom, the same light that now brightened the children's faces, had come from the same man she once dimmed with her words. For the first time, she understood the meaning of grace. Not the kind spoken of in church, but the kind that meets you quietly in the dark. The kind that forgives without being asked. As she walked home that night, her shadow stretched long across the dusty road, and though her heart was heavy, something inside her had shifted. Because sometimes the greatest lesson life teaches isn't written on a chalkboard, it's written in regret. The past doesn't knock. It walks right up to you when you least expect it. The sun was warm that Saturday morning, painting the school compound in soft gold. The teachers were busy arranging chairs and decorating the hall for the unveiling of the solar project. Banners fluttered in the breeze, children ran around holding tiny flags, and the air was thick with excitement. Nneoma had volunteered to help coordinate the event. It wasn't just duty, it was gratitude. She hadn't stopped thinking about the light that changed her classroom, and every time she saw those glowing bulbs, her heart whispered the same unspoken name, Kofi. As guests arrived, she smiled politely, shaking hands, giving directions. She felt calm until she heard the sound of a car door shut outside. Something in the air shifted. The noise faded. Conversations paused. When she looked up, her heart stumbled. It was him. Kofi stepped out of a clean SUV wearing a crisp white shirt and a calm smile that looked effortless. The teachers whispered his name like a secret. He walked toward the hall, surrounded by his team, shaking hands humbly with the headmaster. His presence carried quiet confidence, the kind that came from peace, not pride. Nneoma froze, clutching the edge of a table to steady herself. It had been years, but time had done something powerful to him. He looked stronger, wiser, but still the same eyes she once turned away. Their paths crossed inside the hall. He noticed her. Of course he did. For a moment, their eyes met, and the entire room seemed to fade into silence. She expected bitterness, coldness, maybe even anger, but instead, he smiled politely and said, "Good morning, Miss Benson." The words hit her like a soft wave. Polite, distant, yet kind. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out, just a nod. Throughout the ceremony, Kofi moved with grace. He spoke about community, growth, and the power of giving back. Light, he said, is not just about power. It's about purpose. We rise not by what we keep, but by what we give. Every sentence landed deep in Nneoma's heart. It wasn't the speech that hurt, it was the man giving it. The one she once rejected for dreaming too big. After the event, as the guests dispersed, Nneoma found herself standing near the solar display stand. The wind lifted her hair, and she turned, only to find Kofi right behind her. "You've done something beautiful," she said quietly. He smiled again. "We all play our part. You teach, I build. Together we move forward." There was no resentment in his voice, only grace. That, more than anything, broke her. "Thank you for the school lights," she managed to say, her voice trembling. He paused for a second, then nodded. They were never mine to give, just part of what's meant to be, and with that, he turned to leave. No drama, no lingering look, just calm closure. But later that night, Nneoma overheard the principal talking on the phone. Yes, Mr. Kofi confirmed the donation came directly from him, fully funded by Sunlink. She froze, her chest tightened. He had given her light, knowing she would never even thank him properly. That night, she sat by her window, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. She wasn't crying for love lost. She was crying for the kind of kindness she once thought weakness. And for the first time, she prayed not for another chance, but for the strength to become worthy of forgiveness. Sometimes what hurts us most is not the past itself, but who we were in it. Weeks passed after the school event. The story of Kofi's anonymous donation spread quietly across Umunzi like evening smoke. No one knew who the generous giver was, but Nneoma had her suspicions. She'd seen the calm in Kofi's eyes that day, the same eyes that once looked at her with love, now filled with peace she couldn't explain. Nneoma found herself thinking about him more than she wanted to admit. Each time she saw a child switching on a classroom light powered by the new solar panels, something stirred inside her. It wasn't guilt alone, it was admiration. The boy she once mocked had become a man of purpose. Her mother noticed the shift. Mrs. Okoro was a woman who never forgot her pride. Their family's fall from wealth had humbled her, but not softened her heart. One night, as they sat by a dim lantern, she leaned toward her daughter and whispered, "You know, you could still make things right with that Kofi boy. He seems successful now. Maybe God is giving us another chance." Nneoma looked up, startled. "Mama, that's not how it works. I hurt him." Her mother's voice turned firm. "Then fix it. A woman must know where favor is rising." The words cut deep. Nneoma turned away, torn between shame and a longing she couldn't name. The next week, fate brought them together again. The community organized a youth outreach program funded by Kofi's foundation. Nneoma, now volunteering at the school, was asked to help coordinate. When Kofi arrived, his presence filled the compound. He was composed, focused, smiling at everyone with quiet dignity. "Good morning, Miss Okoro," he said, politely extending a hand. His tone carried no resentment, no sarcasm, just calm respect. That made it worse. She smiled awkwardly. "Good morning, Mr. Kofi." They worked side by side that day, speaking little. The silence between them was heavy, but not hostile. Occasionally, their eyes met, and each time, Nneoma saw in him a man she no longer recognized. Later that evening, as the sun melted behind the palm trees, Kofi stepped aside to take a call. He moved toward his car, unaware that his driver had left his phone screen open on the dashboard. A message from Mrs. Okoro popped up. "I hope you and my daughter are finding time to talk. She is willing to make things right if you're ready." Kofi froze for a moment, reading the message in silence. A soft sigh escaped him. He said nothing, deleted the text, and looked back toward the schoolyard where Nneoma was helping children clean up. He smiled faintly, not out of mockery, but understanding. He had no anger left, just clarity. That night, as he drove back to the city, the stars shimmered over the quiet roads of Umunzi. Kofi whispered under his breath, "Some lessons don't need to be taught twice." In the village, Nneoma sat awake by the window, the night breeze brushing her face. She didn't know what her mother had done, but deep in her heart, she prayed that if she ever crossed paths with Kofi again, it wouldn't be out of regret, but respect. And somewhere, in the silence, the distance between who they were and who they had become began to fade. Success isn't just about what you gain, it's about what you refuse to lose. The morning sun burned gently over the newly cleared field at the heart of the village. The land that had once been filled with weeds now buzzed with movement and purpose. Wooden frames were rising. Hammers struck rhythmically. Kofi stood among the workers, his shirt soaked with sweat, his face calm and focused. He was building something more than a community center. He was building a legacy. The air smelled of red dust and hope. Teenagers carried planks, women brought water and food, and elders sat under the trees watching the miracle take shape. Every nail driven in felt like redemption, proof that dreams born in pain could still bless others. Nneoma walked into the site one afternoon, hesitant at first. She wore a simple blue dress, nothing like the bright clothes she once flaunted. The workers greeted her kindly, some recognizing her from the old days. She smiled shyly and asked where she could help. When Kofi saw her, he froze for a moment, but he nodded politely, saying only, "We can always use an extra hand." She joined the volunteer group, helping with the children, reading, teaching songs, keeping them busy while the adults worked. Sometimes Kofi watched from a distance, seeing how the kids clung to her, how her laughter carried across the dusty yard. There was something different in her now. In the evenings, when the sun dipped low, Kofi would sit on a low wall near the solar poles they had installed. One night, Nneoma joined him. "You've done so much for this place," she said, quietly. He looked at the glowing lights. "It's not just me. The village did this." She smiled faintly. Still, not everyone would come back after what happened. He paused, then said softly, "Some things are bigger than the past." For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the night, the crickets, the hum of new power lines, the distant laughter of children playing under the lights he once dreamed of building. Over the next few weeks, they worked side by side. Nneoma showed genuine care, not out of guilt, but purpose. She began organizing reading sessions for the kids, staying late to clean up, and encouraging others to join. Kofi noticed the effort, but he kept his distance, unsure what it all meant. One afternoon, a friend told him that Nneoma had received a job offer abroad, a good one. Everyone expected her to leave, but she didn't. She quietly declined. When he asked why, she simply said, "The children here need me more than any paycheck." That answer stayed with him. It wasn't the kind of thing the old Nneoma would have said. When the community center finally opened, it felt like a festival. The entire village gathered. Drums echoed, elders prayed, and the new solar lights came alive one by one. The crowd cheered as Kofi gave a short speech, his voice steady and humble. Nneoma stood at the edge of the stage, clapping with everyone else. Their eyes met for a brief second. There was no pride there, no regret, just mutual respect, born from the long road between who they were and who they had become. As the music rose, Kofi looked at the glowing building and thought quietly to himself, "This is what real success feels like." And in that moment, the boy who once left the village in pain had finally found peace within it. True change doesn't start with words. It starts with quiet choices no one sees. Months passed, and the village began to glow at night. Solar lamps lit up streets that once fell silent after dusk. The hum of life returned. Laughter, night markets, children chasing shadows under the new lights. At the center of it all stood Sunlink's banner, faded slightly from the sun, but proud. Nneoma had become a familiar face at the company's local office. She coordinated youth mentorship programs, taught teenagers about discipline and financial responsibility, and often spoke to young girls about finding strength beyond appearances. She was no longer the woman who measured worth by wealth. One evening, as the sun bled into orange over the rooftops, Kofi arrived at the center unannounced. The children rushed to greet him, shouting his name. He smiled and handed out candies, then stood quietly at the back of the classroom, watching Nneoma teach. When the class ended, she turned and saw him. For a moment, neither spoke. The past hovered between them, fragile, but no longer heavy. "You've done well here," he said finally. She smiled faintly. "I'm just doing my part." Kofi looked around the lit classroom. "You've changed this place, Nneoma." She looked down, fingers brushing the edge of her notebook. "I had to. I couldn't live with who I used to be." There was no bitterness in her voice, only truth. She hesitated, then whispered, "Kofi, I'm sorry for how I treated you, for not seeing who you were before everyone else did." He looked at her for a long moment before answering, "I forgave you a long time ago." Her eyes filled with quiet relief. "Thank you." He nodded, a gentle smile tugging at his lips. "You know, maybe everything had to happen this way. Otherwise, neither of us would be standing here today." For a while, they stood in silence, the hum of the solar fans filling the room. As he prepared to leave, he turned to her again. "Sunlink is expanding. We're building centers across Africa, and I want you to lead one of the projects." She froze. "Me? You've got the heart for it," he said simply, "and that matters more than anything else." Tears welled in her eyes. "Kofi, I don't know what to say." "Then don't," he replied with a warm grin. "Just keep doing what you're doing." When he walked out into the night, the streetlights followed him like gentle stars. Nneoma stood at the doorway, watching him disappear down the road, not as the man she once rejected, but as the man who taught her what true strength looks like. That night, she sat on her bed, staring at the letter he'd left, a formal offer, stamped and signed. But what stayed with her wasn't the job. It was the quiet grace behind it. Because forgiveness, she realized, isn't weakness. It's power, the kind that rebuilds lives, one light at a time. The same village that mocked his poverty now celebrates his vision. Morning sunlight washed over the village like gold dust. From the highest hill, the rooftops shimmered with silver solar panels, each one carrying a piece of Kofi's dream. The hum of electricity had become the new sound of life, blending with birdsong, laughter, and the chatter of a hopeful people. The community center stood proudly at the heart of it all. The once quiet building now echoed with energy. Young men learning to install solar kits, women running new businesses powered by clean energy, children studying at night without candles. Kofi stood by the entrance, watching it all unfold. Every corner told a story of transformation. Not his, but the village's. He'd built Sunlink from nothing, but now it had become something far greater than him. Nneoma walked up beside him, carrying a clipboard. "They finished the final installation this morning," she said, with a soft smile. "Every home has light now." Kofi nodded slowly, eyes scanning the horizon. "Every home deserves light." The governor's representative arrived with a small entourage, reporters snapping photos. The ceremony was brief but powerful. They cut the ribbon for the new Sunlink Training Center, the air filled with applause and drumming. But then, as the crowd began to cheer, Kofi unveiled a plaque, something he'd kept secret until that moment. It read, "The Mary Foundation for Innovation, in honor of my mother." The crowd went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in cheers. Some clapped, others wiped their eyes. Even the elders stood to salute. Nneoma watched him quietly, a deep emotion softening her gaze. This wasn't about recognition. It was about gratitude, the kind that reaches across generations. Later, as the evening sun began to fall, music filled the air, drums, laughter, dancing, the whole village alive in celebration. Children wore T-shirts printed with "Sunlink, light for all." Kofi moved through the crowd, shaking hands, smiling, thanking people for believing in the vision. The same villagers who once pitied him now looked at him with pride. At the edge of the square, Nneoma stood watching, surrounded by the kids she mentored. One of them tugged at her arm and said, "Auntie, is it true Mr. Kofi used to be poor?" She smiled, looking out at him across the dancing crowd. Yes, she said softly, but he was never small. As the music swelled and fireworks cracked softly in the distance, the camera of life seemed to pan upward, from the glowing rooftops to the glittering night sky. Kofi raised his eyes toward the heavens, whispering a thank you to the mother who once told him, "Never let poverty define your worth." And for the first time, he truly felt free, not because he had succeeded, but because he had given something back that would outlive him. That night, under the hum of solar lights, the village didn't just shine, it glowed with dignity. They thought his revenge would be loud, but his kindness echoed louder. The sun had barely risen when word began to spread. Kofi is back in town again. But this time, there were no banners, no government convoys, no reporters. He arrived quietly, driving a simple truck filled with boxes, smiling as if the weight of the world had finally lifted off him. The villagers gathered slowly, curiosity buzzing like bees in the air. Children ran ahead, shouting his name. Old men came out with walking sticks. Women peered from their shops. Kofi climbed onto the small podium in front of the community center and waved. His tone was calm, almost humble. "My people," he began, "you've seen what light can do. But now, I want every home, every heart, to shine brighter." He motioned to his team, and one by one they opened the truck and began unloading solar kits, hundreds of them. "From today," he continued, his voice steady, "no family in this village will pay for electricity again. It's my gift to the people who raised me." For a moment, silence fell. Then came the shouts, the laughter, the tears. Some clapped, others ran to hug him. Elders lifted their hands in prayer. Mothers wept openly, calling his name. Nneoma stood near the back of the crowd, hands trembling as she watched the scene unfold. Her mother was beside her, tears rolling freely. Then Kofi walked up to them. He smiled softly. "Good morning, Ma," he said, bowing slightly to Nneoma's mother. "I know things have been hard. I'd like to help your family restart, this time with honesty and peace." He handed her a brown envelope. Inside was the deed to a small business, a clean energy supply shop registered under her name. The older woman couldn't speak. She dropped to her knees, crying. "My son, God bless you." Kofi quickly helped her up. "Please, Ma, stand. There's no debt between us." Only light Nneoma stood still, her throat tightening. She whispered, "Why are you doing all this?" He smiled, eyes soft with sincerity. "Because darkness never wins, Nneoma. Light always finds a way back." As the village celebrated into the evening, music filled the air once again. The same square where they once mocked his dreams now danced to his legacy. When night fell, the lights across the rooftops glowed brighter than ever before, free, clean, endless. The whole village bathed in gold, alive with laughter. From the distance, a reporter snapped a photo. Kofi standing under the solar glow, smiling quietly, surrounded by his people. The headline the next morning would read, "The boy they rejected, the man who lit a nation." But Kofi didn't care for headlines. That night, he sat by the hill overlooking the lights and exhaled deeply. Behind him, Nneoma approached quietly. "Thank you," she said. He turned slightly, smiling. "You don't have to thank me." "I'm not thanking you for the light," she said softly. "I'm thanking you for reminding me that love, real love, gives without asking." They both stood in silence, watching the village glow below. And in a gentle narration that seemed to rise from her heart, Nneoma whispered, "He didn't just change his life, he changed all of ours." The camera pulls upward, past the rooftops, past the glowing lamps, into the stars. The final frame fades on a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest revenge is grace. In a world where pride breaks hearts and money blinds the soul, one man proved that true power isn't in what you earn, it's in what you give back. Kofi didn't just build lights, he lit up a generation. Tell me, if you were him, would you forgive the ones who once looked down on you? If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification button so you never miss out on our latest intriguing stories. Thanks for watching.